What's up, Star Wars fans? We're the Hills Maniacs, and today we're going to be discussing our favorite moments from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series.
Well, first of all, I just want to say, overall, I enjoyed the series very much. Like, we talked about a lot of our favorite things from the, in the mid-season review that we did, so go check out that video for more of our opinions on at least the first 3 episodes of the series. I had a lot of fun with it, and I think it really captured, like, what Obi-Wan was going through and everything else, during this time after, you know, the Revenge of the Sith and Order 66 and all that stuff. Basically, after Anakin turned heel and went to the dark side. I feel like they portrayed that really well. I feel like they portrayed that really well in this series. But if I had to pick, like, one of my favorite, I'd say, like, overall moments from this series is when Obi-Wan first finds out that Anakin is still alive. He finds this out from the third sister, Reva, who's one of, like, the main villains of the series, I guess, technically. She tells him that Anakin is alive and that he is Darth Vader, and you can see the look on Obi-Wan's face, like, it's kind of confusion and some, like, doubt, like, is she lying to me, and things like that, and he kind of gets this weird look on his face, and then at the end of that same episode, he can sense Anakin's presence all of a sudden, and then you see, like, he just says Anakin, and Vader, like, wakes up, and it's like this horror movie villain has come back to life or something, like a Jason Voorhees type of thing. I thought that was really well done, because not only do you see Obi-Wan is, like, confused about how Anakin is still alive or whatever, and questioning whether or not he is, but then when he realizes he is, you kind of get this, like, sort of terror in his eyes, in that exact moment as well, that which really made it feel more like a horror type thing.
I mean, I kind of agree that, yeah, that was a good part of the series, because up until that point, and I guess I never really thought about it, that he didn't know that Anakin survived.
Right.
And so, really, if this series hadn't happened, then in A New Hope, Obi-Wan should technically not know that Darth Vader is Anakin.
Right, and that's why I like that they added in this little detail, like, this is how he finds out that Anakin is he kind of knew he was Darth Vader, I guess, but he didn't know Anakin was still alive at this time. So I like that they threw that in there. You know, they didn't have to really put that in there necessarily. He could have just, like, known that Anakin was still alive, I guess. But it kind of gives a whole new meaning to, like, him wanting to protect Luke and Leia and stuff, because he just thought, he was just kind of watching over them. He never really thought Anakin was alive and could be a threat to them. But now he knows that, and you can see that, like, concerned look on his face. I think Ewan McGregor did a really good job of, like, showing that emotion of finding out that Anakin is alive.
That, to me, gave me the same vibes that it gave when Vader revealed that he was Luke's father.
Right.
That reaction that Luke had when Vader said, "I am your father," you know, where he screams no, and then, you know, and I think it gave that same kind of reaction. Like, this, I mean, we already knew it. Like, we already knew that Vader was Anakin. But for somebody just starting out watching Star Wars that didn't know, you know, maybe they just watched the prequels and didn't watch the original stuff. It was just that type of realization, I think, for Obi-Wan. And that's what connects him with Luke a lot. You know, you pay attention to the stuff that Obi-Wan goes through in this series. It kind of parallels a lot of what Luke ends up going through in 4, 5, and 6. Not just with Vader, but with Leia, with Han, with Chewie, you know. And Obi-Wan is there for all of that as well. But it kind of parallels exactly what Luke goes through. And so I think it's kind of cool that they had these similarities in this series, which obviously takes place before 4, 5, and 6. But also is able to set it up because of those movies coming out beforehand. You can set up, you know, things to happen that way, and it just brings that connection back to Luke and Obi-Wan and why they seem to, like, connect a lot better than, say, Luke and Yoda, or Luke and Han
Right.
throughout the series, and it's because they have a common thing with each other that is Darth Vader and trying to basically defeat him without actually killing him. Okay, so on the note of you mentioning the third sister, Reva, I thought it was really cool that we got to see the Inquisitors in live action, because
that's
up until
true.
now, we've only really seen them in Jedi Fallen Order, the video game, and Star Wars Rebels, which if you didn't watch Rebels, then you probably had no clue who the Inquisitors were. And so it was really cool to be able to see them in live action, even though I don't think we've seen the third sister before. I don't think we've seen 10th brother before. Was it 10th brother? I think it was 10th brother, 7th brother, whatever he was. I think it was 10th.
So yeah, something like that.
And the Grand Inquisitor, out of the ones we saw in Obi-Wan Kenobi, was the only one that we've seen before, and that was in Rebels. And we also got to see Fortress Inquisitoris, which was seriously cool. Even the Jedi Tomb, but it was just like, that was something that we've only seen in Jedi Fallen Order. I don't even think they mentioned it in Rebels. So to be able to see that, and how it definitely parallels Darth Vader. I mean, you look at everything within it, obviously is going to be set up for Vader. So it was just kind of cool to finally get to see these characters that really we knew nothing about, being like the Grand Inquisitor. Like we didn't know much about him until the end of Rebels, when we learned that he was a Jedi Temple guard that turned to the dark side during Order 66, and basically helped Anakin to kill the Jedi in the temple. So other than that, like, we knew nothing about any of the Inquisitors, and to be able to see especially Reva's backstory throughout the series, and what she went through as a youngling that made her want to be an Inquisitor,
Right.
that also then allowed her to have her change of heart later on. I think that was really cool to be able to finally see that.
Right, and I think it added a cool, like, interesting depth to the whole overall plot and stuff, because these are other characters that were involved with Order 66. Like you said, they were Jedi that kind of had a fall from grace and ended up joining the dark side and went to hunt other Jedi. I like that we got to see this side of things, like what happens to the Jedi that weren't really killed that day. Like, did any of them decide to turn to the dark side? And this is what we got, the Inquisitors. I think that's like an interesting aspect to the Star Wars lore and canon and everything else. And I think it did add a lot more, like, intrigue to it, because, like we saw with Reva, like you said, like, could they turn back to the light and be the Jedi again? I assume they all die probably before A New Hope, or at least they're hidden somewhere or whatever, because we don't see them in...
Spoilers, Reva turns back to the good side, so...
Like, you don't see them in, like, A New Hope and all those movies and stuff. Obviously something happened before those points, but I like that we got to see them in this. I think another really cool thing about this series was the first time, like, Vader fought Obi-Wan in this series, because it was... I mentioned this in our mid-season review as well. The way they concealed Vader in the darkness in this episode, I think it was like episode 2 or 3 or something, when Obi-Wan first fights him, and he's still kind of weak, because, like, Obi-Wan gave up on the Force and everything for these 10 years, so he doesn't really have that power and that fighting skill yet, and he's just kind of defending himself, rather than, like, we typically see him fighting like a Jedi, But I like how they concealed Vader in the darkness, and, like, the only thing you can see of him is his lightsaber glowing in the darkness, and the buttons from his, like, I guess, like, his machine buttons or whatever on his suit and stuff. I thought that was really cool, and it gave off that horror movie vibe to it, with, like, the horror villain hiding in the shadows coming after you and stuff. And they did a really nice job of showing that. And even, like, the lead up to that, when Vader was walking through that town that Obi-Wan was hiding in, and he's just kind of killing people along the way. Like, he broke someone's neck with the Force, and
Not
he was
just
throwing
anyone,
people around.
Though. It was a kid.
Well, that too,
Like,
yeah,
it
and
was
that,
a
yeah.
kid. He has no remorse in this series.
No, and this
I
was
like
really
it.
cool to see. Just the way they made him seem like a horror movie villain, even throughout the whole thing, but mostly in this whole sequence. You really got that horror movie vibe to it, and especially the scene where he like senses Obi-Wan is there and he turns and it makes that like kind of creaking sound type of thing, like from horror movies when they suddenly turn around and see you, but Obi-Wan wasn't there or whatever. So I thought that they did a really nice job of making him seem like a Jason Voorhees or a Michael Myers and stuff, but with the Force, which is a lot more deadlier. So I thought that was a really cool thing they did in this series. That was kind of a cool scene. Just that whole, pretty much that whole episode, I guess, was kind of based around that. Vader looking for Obi-Wan and everything.
Right, and to add on to that, I mean, I had, in my notes, I had one of my favorite things from this series was Darth Vader, and it's not just because he's my favorite Star Wars character. I mean, look
I would have never gotten that.
No, but in this series, we see a lot more Vader. When you watch Rogue One, it makes you like really enjoy Darth Vader because he's at that point where he just transitioned from Anakin to Darth Vader still, and kind of he's going into A New Hope and all of that kind of stuff. So he was still fairly young and could move around and stuff. But you watch this where he's even younger, and he literally 5 years ago became the Darth Vader that he is. He's still Anakin. He still fights like Anakin, and I like that they show that throughout this series, like how quick he can actually move for being burned completely and losing his legs and one of his arms, or both of his arms, whatever. To being able to still focus enough to use the Force. I mean, he pulled a ship out of the sky and tore it to pieces, even though it was a decoy ship. We haven't seen that since the Force Unleashed video game. Nobody else has done that. And I think that is, like, seriously, Darth Vader has officially become the greatest Star Wars character ever.
It makes you wonder, like, what exactly does he need Palpatine for? He could have overthrown Palpatine at any time with how powerful he is. And, yeah, I mean, I like that it kind of gave us, even though it's about Obi-Wan Kenobi, because it's called Obi-Wan Kenobi, it gave us the character arcs for both Vader and Obi-Wan.
Yes.
Like, following the most recent events we would have seen them in would be Revenge of the Sith, chronologically. So it's like, it gave us a look at what they've both kind of been doing within that 10 years.
Yeah.
Like Obi-Wan went into exile, he blames himself, feels like he failed the Jedi and he failed Anakin and all this other stuff, and he's basically moping around on Tatooine keeping an eye on Luke, whereas Vader's been getting stronger all this time, you could say.
And literally building his hatred
building his hatred, building the Empire, basically everything else. He's got the Inquisitors with him and stuff. So I like that it gave us both sides of the story throughout this entire series. And they could have easily called this series just like Vader or something, and it still would have felt exactly the same.
They really should.
And like, there's never a point where it goes away from, like, Vader's motivation is he wants to torture Obi-Wan the way Obi-Wan tortured him by leaving him to burn. He wants Obi-Wan to suffer, and Obi-Wan's motivation is he wants his friend back, basically. He wants to get Anakin back. He doesn't want to kill Vader, which we see throughout. He had plenty of opportunities where he could have killed Vader when they were fighting, especially in their last battle in Episode 6. But, like, you see that he doesn't want to kill him. He wants Anakin back. And that kind of ties into something else that I thought was really cool about this, was after in their fight in the last episode, Obi-Wan cuts half of Vader's mask off, essentially. I mean, it was kind of just, it wasn't like completely like, oh, here's half of it is gone. It was like the eye down, kind of, and it left enough where you could see part of Anakin's face, and it also kind of ruined the voice modulator and everything inside it. And I thought this worked really well because Obi-Wan got to see the face underneath the mask. He got to see his friend, his Padawan, Anakin, for the first time since Revenge of the Sith, and you could see the emotion on his face. Like, again, like I said, Ewan McGregor did a really good performance here. Like, he's kind of like crying, you know, he's like, here's my friend, but I can see you're like tortured and broken. And to have Anakin say, or I guess Vader say, I'm not your failure, you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did. And then to hear Obi-Wan say goodbye Vader at the end instead of goodbye old friend or goodbye Anakin, like, you got that, all that emotion from that, and just seeing him see Anakin's face, that kind of just, like, you know, as a Star Wars fan, you know, that brings back a lot of that tension, and I think they did a really nice job of showing that, like, how truly broken Anakin is, and how, like, emotional Obi-Wan is because of all this, and it's eating him up inside just as much as it is Vader.
And I like too, and I've heard other people mention this, that he cuts half of his mask because Luke takes the full helmet off.
Well, it was like he cut like the left side of the mask.
He cut the left side. Then in Rebels, something happens where Ahsoka realizes that it's Anakin by cutting the right side of the mask, which happens later on.
So it's like the two halves are cut.
So the two halves are cut, and then Luke removes the whole mask in
and gets
Return
Anakin
of the Jedi.
back. Yeah, I kind of like that.
Which is a great setup for, like, if you didn't watch Rebels, you wouldn't know that, but it's still kind of a great setup where, like, Obi-Wan only gets half of Anakin, and then Luke is able to
get the full thing,
bring the full Anakin back out to save his son. And I thought it was really cool to be able to see, like you said, with the emotion that Ewan McGregor put into Obi-Wan Kenobi for this series, especially the finale episode.
Right.
Was just, it was so impactful, I think, not just for Star Wars, but just for Disney in general, I think, now, because people think now that they can put on great performances, and it might just be Ewan McGregor, but I mean, it was just great when you got
I
to
like
see
the
that.
way that they did the, like, they had his voice box messed up, so you kind of get the part of Hayden Christensen's voice and part of, like, the James Earl Jones Vader sort of voice, like, kind of going in and out as it was like a radio static type of thing, like it was messing up. I thought that was really cool, and it kind of shows you the two different sides of Anakin, basically, as he was speaking to Obi-Wan. So that was a pretty neat, like, little detail they added in there, too, with his mask being cut.
Right, so I guess to wrap it up, I guess we should discuss whether or not we think that there should be a season 2 leading into 4, 5, and 6.
I think, I mean, if they were going to do a season 2, I feel like, first of all, I do feel like there's a lot more they could tell with Obi-Wan, because I think Ewan McGregor even tweeted, he said, there's a lot more to tell before I morph into Alec Guinness. You know, so it's like you can see the transition between, you know, Ewan McGregor into Alec. It's like in 7 years or whatever. It's like he's going to go from this to this.
Right.
Like, there must be some stress
between
there.
7 and 10 more years
I think,
before.
But I think if they were to have a season 2, I think it would be cool to maybe explore, like, Obi-Wan sort of maybe seeking out other Jedi that might still be alive. Like, you could get, like, a Cal Kestis appearance in there. Or Quinlan Voss and things. I think that would be a cool thing to see, kind of like a Mandalorian style season where he's going to different planets and stuff and trying to find other Jedi to help him fight back against Vader, because he knows Vader's still alive even at the end of this episode, obviously, and he could start building his own resistance and stuff. I think that would be a cool thing to see, and maybe we'd get more with the Inquisitors and stuff like that along the way.
I definitely agree that there's the 7 to 10 year period after this, before A New Hope and before, you know, Ewan McGregor becomes Alec Guinness, and to basically fill in the rest of this gap. And this, I'm glad they're doing this, because this is always something that I have wondered what happened. I think it would be cool to focus more on the Tatooine aspect of Obi-Wan now, because we know he still has the stuff, at least from the comics they mentioned, you know, where he ends up saving Owen Large from Black Chrysanthemum, who was just introduced in Book of Boba Fett, and I theorized that he might appear in Obi-Wan Kenobi, which he didn't, because they didn't do that battle. But
that could be season 2.
That could happen in season 2. And who knows, maybe they'll do another backstory and they'll reveal about what happened with Grogu in the Jedi Temple.
That would be cool.
They could
That'd
do
be
that.
a nice way to, like...
Was it Obi-Wan? Was it Anakin? Was it the Grand Inquisitor? Was it Yoda? Was it somebody else?
I have it. I know
flashback or something.
I know who it was. Reva saves him.
It could have been Reva.
Because she was still alive in the Jedi Temple.
It could have been Reva. I mean,
there you go.
We wouldn't have
put
known.
that on paper, ladies and gentlemen. Reva saved Grogu.
And speaking of Reva, she could come back in season 2.
I personally
if they did one, and
right.
maybe she'll end up tracking down Vader again and tries to kill Vader again.
I personally think they could do a spin-off from this Obi-Wan Kenobi series and have it focused on Reva trying to get back to Vader.
I think they could do a lot of spin-offs of this. Like,
I
would like to see a spin-off of like Order 66, what happened with all the other Jedi that we didn't see get killed.
Right, that's
you could do a bunch of spin-offs off of just stuff we saw in here. They could do a whole thing about just the Jedi tomb that we saw in Fortress Inquisitors. There's just so much that they can still do with this, and I'm not opposed to having a season 2. And with the hype that this series had, and with how good it actually ended up being, I thought it was just going to kind of be another mediocre, Book of Boba Fett type of...
Oh, I'm glad it wasn't.
Star Wars. But this turned out to, in my opinion, this is better than The Mandalorian.
I was going to say that too. I think this is...
Nothing against Grogu, but Vader's got you beat, dude.
I think this was the best series, like, overall that Star Wars has done. And I think they should do a season 2, like we said, and have all these spin-offs or whatever that aren't... Because right now The Mandalorian has its spin-offs, but this is set after these events. I think it'd be cool to have this one have several spin-offs that still have, like, Hayden Christensen being Vader and all that kind of stuff. And it takes place immediately after the Obi-Wan stuff.
Right.
But let us know what you guys think down in the comments section. Did you enjoy the series overall? What were some of your favorite moments? Let us know down in the comments section. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more.
And remember, leave the scumbaggery at home, and may the Force be with you.
Bye, guys.